Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If we could make a start, please. Good evening, I'm Councillor Paul Wilby. I'm the Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the committee. May I take this opportunity to advise you that if there is a fire alarm, it does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Service Team will assess the situation and give further instruction on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the council. If anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, can you please let me know now?
Reserve my right.
Noted. I ask this question not to stop you, but merely to ensure that members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. I'd also like to advise members to talk by way of the microphones, and members of the public, when you do come forward, you have 3 minutes. Obviously, the gentleman from Lenham will get some extended time as we've had that conversation, but it's just the button in the middle for the speech when you do come forward. Okay, apologies. Okay, we have apologies from Councillor Jeffries. He's just phoned in to say that he won't be making it tonight. And then Councillor Russell has also given apologies. I believe we have substitutes, Councillor Springett for Councillor Russell. Is that correct? Any other substitutes?
Councillor Millam substituting for Councillor Jeffrey.
Councillor Green and substituting for Councillor Thompson for items 13, 14 and 19.
Councillor Mike Thompson substituting for Councillor Harwood for the MBC items.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Moving on, I can't see any visiting members. No. Item 4. There are no items. There are no items that are recommended for withdrawal from the agenda, so we've taken all items. Date of the adjourned meeting is 19th of February. Hopefully, we shouldn't need it. Urgent items. You will see there are some urgent papers on your table, and we will take any verbal urgent updates as well to go with it. Is that agreed? Okay, disclosures by members and officers. So I'll start at the left as always.
No.
None, Mr. Chairman.
None. None. None on disclosures, but obviously for lobbying later.
No disclosures, Chair.
Yeah, I was actually lobbied on one item, which I've forgotten what it is now.
So
But I haven't been lobbied on any of the items I'm here for today.
okay, thank you. That's the next item, but we'll just skip you on the that one. Councillor Nagy.
None. None.
Yep, as a member of the Cabinet, I will withdraw from items 13 and 14 on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Summerhill. Okay, now for the lobbying. We'll go around again one more time. Councillor Gooch, have you been lobbied?
I was lobbied on one of them, but I wasn't able to read it, and I can't remember which one it was. And I'm terribly sorry to admit that, but I do believe that honesty is the best policy. Thank you.
That is noted, Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Chairman. I've been lobbied on item 16.
Item 16 and 19.
None.
No lobbying. 16 and 19.
16 and 19, Chair.
Councillor Nagy,
16 and 19.
None.
Yeah, I've got trumps 15, 16 and 19.
I was just going to say what we say and all. Okay. Moving on. Item 9. I move that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed. Is that agreed? Item 10. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of January 2026 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you, councillors. Item 11. There are no petitions this evening. Deferred items. I call upon Tony Ryan to go through the deferred items.
Yes, the two deferred items. I think we received information on the second item, Hart Farm, this week, and we are currently assessing that detail. Hope to get both of them back within two cycles. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Moving on then, the agenda. Item 19, I call upon Sean Scott to introduce the item for, no, 2 seconds, 13. I think I might jump. My apologies, item 13, land adjoining 44 Gladstone Road.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this is an application for a total of 18 dwellings, and it's across sort of 3 different areas of the site. This plan's in your papers. So the first part is south of Gladstone Road, which is currently a car park that serves a vacant office to the south, and 1 detached house is proposed there. The middle part of the site, and that's on the north of Granville Road. Currently, there's 1 to 3 story commercial buildings, including that office building. And this site sits around 5 metres lower than Gladstone Road. And here a terrace row of 9 houses is proposed. And then lastly, on the south side, there's a 2-story warehouse. I've got some photos to show you, and a 4-story apartment block with 8 flats is proposed here. So I'll briefly run through each site. This is the top site on Gladstone Road, so that's the boundary here on that side, and as you can see, the car park and the office building behind, and within here is the detached house. That's just a cross section, so it sits in the space there. See how it relates to the buildings either side. And then again, this is in your papers. It's quite handy CGI from the applicant just to show the dwelling. So the second site for the terraced houses, so the edge of the site's the timber fence here, and it runs all the way to the 3-story office building here. You can see the houses on Gladstone Road at the much higher level. So yeah, here, this is where the terrace is proposed. This is the other end, so we can see the office, the large office building. So very quickly with the layout, you've got how the terraced houses set back from the road with a parking space each and a new row of trees. And then in the rear, as is mentioned in the report, there'll be a new retaining wall that runs across the back here, about 4.5 meters high. It'll be designed to allow planting within it. And as mentioned in the report, a few of the gardens here are smaller than the footprint of the house, which is one of our policies. And you can also see that some of them are fairly close to this retaining wall. And as we say in the report, we think that relationship is acceptable on balance because we think the terrace proposal is the right response to this site to make the best use of it, and also to provide room for tree planting, which will greatly improve Granville Road. And then sorry, that's the CGI again in your papers. And then lastly, the apartment plot. So these buildings here are what will be demolished. Behind, if anyone's been there recently, I went today, the 4-story apartments next door are up to the 4th story. They're under construction, so there's development behind. Yeah, and then that's what's under construction. So it sort of slots in, follows the building line, and yeah, this shows it together with the apartments under construction. And then lastly, the CGI, which I think is useful to visualize it. Yeah, and that's it. And so permission is recommended as per the papers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have Mr. Thompson for the applicant.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, councillors. On behalf of the applicant, we fully support the officer's recommendation, which is to approve planning permission. The applicant places great weight and importance on early dialogue with the planning department, and this proposed development has been informed by 2 detailed pre-application with officers. The pre-application responses made several recommendations to the project team given the constraints of the site, which have been incorporated into the final design of the development. The applicant also undertook public consultation with local residents, which helped shape the development proposals. The proposed development comprises 3 parcels of land, and after careful consideration, it was chosen to submit 1 standalone planning application for the sites on the northern and southern side of Granville Road and the land adjoining 44 Gladstone Road. This was to ensure a comprehensive development came forward, which delivered a holistic housing scheme, which will enhance the character of the area. The proposal represents a high quality scheme, which will provide a range of homes in the urban area whilst making best and most efficient use of brownfield land in a sustainable location. The proposed development has been sensitively conceived to preserve the amenity of adjoining properties with no objections received from neighbouring residents. The proposed housing has been carefully designed to maximise the standard of accommodation for future occupiers despite the changing levels between Granville and Gladstone Road. The proposed terraced housing has incorporated specific layout measures to allow for appropriate levels of privacy, light and outlook. The proposal will incorporate a robust soft landscaping scheme, including the planting of small-leaved lime trees along the front of the terraced homes. The proposal will result in an 88% uplift of on-site BNG, well above the 20% requirement. There have been no objections from technical or statutory consultees, with conditions recommended in respect from Kent Highways, Kent Ecology, Kent Flood Risk and Environmental Health. No specific objections have been raised by neighbouring residents. In summary, the proposal is in accordance with the Council's spatial strategy within the local plan review and delivers much needed homes in a sustainable location while significantly enhancing the character of the area. Thank you for listening.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Okay, Councillor Cleater, you've indicated.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly, yes, the development in Gladstone Road will be a welcome development and fits in nicely with what's already there. I suppose my only comment is, I'm looking out the window because it's rain, is the proposal for flat roofs on the terrace. The area is, well, it just stores up trouble, let's just say, with flat roofed houses. So that would be my only comment. It's nice not to have HGVs going past my house at 2 o'clock in the morning from Holland. Now that the warehouse is closed, and I'm very glad to see the garage where I get my MOT done is still there, because he's very good and I'd panic if I'd have to find somewhere else. But no, this is an area that is in need of regeneration. You won't get any complaints from locals because it will reduce the number of HGVs that we have put up with over the years. And I think my only comment would be, as you know, because my party always says the same, is around social housing, it's social rents, but that's not the purview of this committee. But I'd just like that comment noted, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cleater. I will just say, with the flat roofs, Councillor Cleater, the technology has changed quite a lot and come on a long way now since the old flat roofs. I'm trying to say that they have new membranes on the rest of it, which actually are watertight and don't cause so many issues. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope that the plethora of Thompsons present this evening will not add to the general confusion. But I just wanted to say that to start off with, I think this is an excellent proposal. Councillor Cleater has used the word regeneration, and that's certainly what was in my mind when I was thinking about this and the how the area is at present. I think one of the most attractive features of the scheme is the row of lime trees in the front gardens of the proposed terraced houses. And I'm just wondering, is that sufficiently covered in the conditions? Is the last condition, which refers to, in general terms, to the landscaping, is that going to cover it? Or we're not going to suddenly lose it as the thing progresses, are we? Hopefully. Thank you very much.
I think Councillor Thompson, if you want to note, that obviously, if you're proposing to vote in favour, that there's a lot of weight put on from the committee that, due to the aesthetics and the planting scheme, then it will highlight in the report. So, we've got Councillor Spooner, then Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm quite impressed with this scheme. I think it's been drawn up very, very well. It has excellent lighting, layout and design, and it's an urban site. It's a brownfield site. I think it's making the optimum use of that land, and it's providing 18 much needed small dwellings, which I think is actually fantastic. And I'm more than happy to propose approval in line with the papers. Thank you.
Okay, I'm quite happy to second that from the chair. Councillor Faye Gooch.
Thank you, Chairman. I certainly echo the views of my colleagues just now. You've taken the words out of my mouth. It was so pleasant to read through these papers, and that doesn't happen very often. The only snag I have, and I'm not convinced it's planning, it may be more building regs, but it was the comment that Councillor Cleater made, this parapet roofing business. I'm telling you that water collects there and it puddles. Even if you've got the best spirit level in the world, I do hope that there's going to be a drain hole by each house, because my next door neighbour's got a parapet and it's lovely and green, and I might put some fish in there one day. But that really is my real concern, because these houses, I hope they're going to last. We're looking at families' future here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Gooch. I'll just bring Mr. Timms in.
Yeah, I suspect it mainly is building control, but in terms of, it's in the report, in terms of surface water drainage for the terrace properties, assume it's going to be angled, it's caught through the downpipes, goes into water butts, they overflow into permeable areas on the driveway. So it's because you have to do sustainable drainage now, it will be controlled beyond, my flat roof that's 40 years old. So it's all within the surface water drainage scheme. And I think, as you say, ultimately it's building regulations and rather than planning.
Thank you.
And then just on the landscaping, so we've got an actual detailed landscaping plan which has the species, which are the lime trees, and that's why condition 3 says carry it out in accordance with that plan. So if they did something different, they'd breach that plan.
Okay, on that note, I believe we go to the vote. All in favour? Okay, that's 12-4, and that is unanimous. Okay, moving on then. Item 14. Another Maidstone one. Maidstone Borough Council Depot, Birchcott Road. I call upon Tony Ryan to introduce the reports.
I think that's down to me. Thank you, Chairman. The application relates to the Maidstone Borough Council depot site, which is situated off of Birchcott Road. Prior approval was recently granted for solar panels on the curved roof of the building. These have now been installed, and the proposal relates to protections or fencing around the perimeter of the building shown on the plan here in blue, an retractable access ladder and a cage to house the solar plant. So this is sort of a bit more zoomed in. You can see all the solar panels on the roof, and protection fencing will be around the edge here, and the retractable ladder here. In elevations, you can see here it's about 1 metre just over high fencing essentially around the curvature of the roof with the retractable ladder. This is the building itself. Currently, there is scaffolding which is put up on a temporary basis to allow for sort of the maintenance of the solar panels. So the proposal is for a more permanent, cost-effective and visually pleasing alternative to the erection of the scaffolding, which is probably need at least once yearly for the repairs and maintenance. So again, more zoomed in views of the building. Here's it here. So the proposal is not considered to cause any harm and is recommended for approval for the reasons set out in the report. Thank you.
Okay, I'm quite happy to propose this from the chair. Thank you, Councillor Gooch. Okay, does anyone wish to talk on this item? No. Okay, I'll move straight to the vote then. All in favour? And that's 12-4. That is unanimous again, and that is approved. Moving on then. Item 19, School Annex, School Lane, Maidstone. I call upon Sean Scott to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. This item relates to an application for full planning permission at the School Annex in School Lane, Maidstone. The proposal is for a change of use of the former School Annex building into a residential dwelling, including alterations to fenestration, use of existing buildings, outbuildings as ancillary storage, creation of 2 parking spaces, and erection of fencing and gate and associated soft landscaping. The application was last presented to committee in September 2025, where it was resolved to defer the item to allow for a community needs exercise to be undertaken. This was to determine if a community use is required within the Shepway ward. The supplementary report before you today focuses on the consideration of the community use and the community needs assessment which has been submitted by the applicant. Notably, the supplementary report concludes that the site has not been used as a community use. It is the case that there have only been elements of community use in the past, the most significant from a boxing club which occupied the site on a short-term basis, and it is evident that the club has moved to suitable alternative accommodation. Therefore, the applicant has not prepared a marketing exercise to establish if there is a need, if the need for a community use, they have not prepared a marketing exercise, but they have looked at whether there is sufficient community need in the area, and it is considered that there is. So therefore, no conflict is identified with LPR INF2, which seeks to protect community uses. I will now provide a broad overview of the existing site and the proposal, as I'm aware that some members may have not been at the last committee. So here is the site location. So it's located within the Maidstone urban area on School Lane and to the southeast of Moat Park and the town centre. So here are some existing photos of the front and rear of the property. And this shows the relationship with the neighbouring property at number 3 School Lane. The site layout plan is here on the left, which shows the improvements to the rear of the property through inclusion of soft landscaping. In addition, there are 2 car parking spaces and hard landscaping. The proposed internal layout is also shown with accommodation in the roof space of the building, allowing for 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. A bedroom would also be located on the ground floor. Here are the proposed elevations. And these include 3 pitched roof dormers, alterations to the fenestration and the side and rear to better align with the functionality of the proposed living space. And that completes the presentation. Attention is drawn to the urgent update, which makes a correction to the representation and draws attention to a new correspondent from a neighbour. As set out in the supplementary report, the proposal is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I believe we have a statement to be read out from Chris Clubb Walker.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a statement on behalf of Sarah Clubb Walker, who is a concerned resident. I'm speaking as the owner of the old schoolhouse, which is physically adjoined to the school annex. For clarity, we do not object to the principle of residential conversion. Our concern relates only to the proposed rear dormer gable windows and the overlooking they will create. Other matters have been addressed within the committee report. The design statement concludes that no neighbouring properties will be impacted by overlooking or loss of amenity. We respectfully disagree. Given the steeply sloping roof and the physically adjoined relationship between the buildings, rear-facing openings will create elevated and direct sight lines into our private rear garden and potentially into our kitchen, resulting in overlooking and a clear loss of residential amenity. Photographs have been submitted to assist in understanding this close rear relationship. Although the building is not listed, its heritage interest supports a restrained approach to external alterations. If planning permission is granted, we respectfully request that roof openings are limited to Velux-style roof lights rather than rear-facing dormer gable windows, as this would be a less intrusive approach and would avoid the creation of direct overlooking and sight lines. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then, we have Mr. Thompson for the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening again. RE Planning were instructed by the applicant following the deferral of the application at the September committee. As part of our instruction, we have prepared a community needs assessment to consider whether the ongoing use of the site is required within Shepway Ward and to evaluate compliance with Part B of Policy LPR INF2 of the Maidstone Local Plan Review. As explained in the committee report, the community needs assessment has not undertaken a marketing exercise. This is because only Clause B of Policy LPR INF2 needs to be satisfied to be policy compliant. To address Clause B, the community needs assessment outlines that there is a surplus of existing community facilities within Shepway Ward and that replacement facilities have been secured by the council through approvals of other planning permissions elsewhere in the area. The community needs assessment undertook a survey of existing community facilities in the Shepway Ward, which involved direct communication with relevant stakeholders of community organisations. This confirmed that at least 5 community venues in Shepway Ward offer diverse community services and confirmed availability and capacity for new bookings. In addition to emerging developments, will add further community spaces to Shepway Ward. These existing and emerging community facilities are more centrally located within the ward, well served by public transport, and have adequate parking. And the community needs assessment found that the site has been vacant for nearly 4 years with no viable long-term community use. There are considerable deficiencies with the building. The proposal will also deliver a family home as well as complying with the council's housing delivery targets. The proposal has been carefully considered by the project team and officers, which has concluded the proposal will not cause an adverse impact in terms of overlooking. The dormer windows have been carefully positioned on the roof slope to avoid any direct overlooking of rear gardens. The applicant has also directly addressed concerns by the neighbour by the provision of trellising at ground floor level to minimise overlooking from certain angles within the rear amenity area. Overall, the community needs assessment directly responds to the committee's request from the September committee and confirms that there are other viable community uses within Shepway Ward, thereby being fully compliant with clause B of LPRINF2. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. This is your question, Councillor Cleaver, isn't it? No. You want to go first? And then I've got Councillor Spring after.
Yes, I suppose my only comment is please tell me where all these community assets are in Shepway Ward, because the government thinks we haven't got them because they've just awarded us £20 million worth of Pride in Place money. That being said, if you're talking about the churches, there's 3, and there's the youth centre that's falling down. That's about it really, because the actual Moat Park Leisure Centres for everyone, not just youth. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. In terms of the dormer and the trellising gives very little protection around privacy. And I suppose if the person next door is actually indicated that rather than dormer, you have the roof line things, I don't think that is too much to ask. Other than that, I have no particular objection to, and I've not had any community feedback apart from the resident next door of anyone objecting to the conversion. But whatever happens, it needs to complement. This is an old building. It may not be listed, but it's a heritage building and one of the few things in Shepway that isn't built in the 1950s and afterwards. So I think it's worth, if we're going to do it sympathetically. And that's really my only comments on that. But please feel free to see me afterwards and tell me where all these community assets are in Shepway.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cleaver. I will, just because I drive past this quite regularly, and I know also the scout hut just on the road, which isn't actually used by any scouts at the moment. It's only used for meetings, so that is available for community use as well. So if you do need a place, there we go. Councillor Springett.
Thank you. I've just got a couple of points to make. The first one is a minor point. There was a comment in one of the, I don't know if it was the objection that became a comment about the loss of a mature tree. So could we ask for another larger type species of tree to be replanted to replace that, possibly as part of the landscaping? And secondly, I fully accept what the neighbour's saying about loss of privacy. Now, you can put up a 1 metre high bit of trellis that does, I was going to say bugger all to stop a dormer window that's a lot higher than 1.8 metres. So would it be possible for just the most easterly dormer to be a Velux? So the other 2 are fine, but the most easterly one, which I suspect is the one that's causing consternation, if that could be a Velux window rather than a dormer, I think it might be nice. As someone who's lost her privacy in her garden, I can tell you it hurts, and I fully understand the neighbours' concerns. Thank you.
Councillor Springett. I'll just bring the officer back in quickly to answer those questions.
Thank you, Chair. So with regards to the privacy screen, so there's a condition there that just talks about having a privacy screen. It doesn't specify trellis as such, so we can look at that in further detail when those details are submitted. And then with regards to the tree, the tree matters. There's no trees being lost, so there's no trees that need to be replaced by a loss as part of the proposals. Thirdly, sorry, we should. I'm just going to refer back to the roof plan. So as you can see from, sorry, I'll refer back to the photos. As you can see here, the dormers would be on this roof slope here, so set back behind the neighbouring property, which almost obscures a view. So I'm not of the view that changing the design of the dormers and the layout of the dormers would have you know, I don't think the dormers as they are have an impact on privacy. So that's my remark on that one.
Thank you.
So,
Councillor Sprinkler.
just come back. So then why are you putting in a trellis then? If there's a wall there.
The trellis is due to an unusual situation with the placement of windows. So I'll share the presentation back again just to illustrate that. So obviously these weren't dwellings to start with. So, and as they've been divided up, what you have are these two windows which face onto the open. So this area here is open space in the property. So where this railing is and where this sort of makeshift trellis is at present needs to be more substantial to make a division so that people cannot view into these windows directly from the open space, from the garden.
Not seen from the dormer.
So from the dormer, they're two separate matters. So the dormer is set up on the roof, and it's not. The trellis would not be affecting the dormers. The trellis is to protect ground floor windows, or the screening, I should call it.
Yes, thanks, Sean. The other thing, we can't change the windows from what's on the plans. The plan in front of us is the plan we've got to decide on. That's going too far beyond the material. You know, I think in the past when we've changed windows, to obscure windows and such, that's a slight material design. This is actually changing the plans themselves. So we can't just ask for the dormer to be removed and actually change to a Velux window. Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. I don't want to get involved in the minutiae of the dormer windows and so on, because that all seems to have been taken care of quite well in the papers to me. Nor do I want to get into a dogfight with Councillor Cleater over what constitutes and doesn't constitute a community facility and blah, blah, blah. I was of the opinion that the request from the last meeting had been taken on board and pursued and adequately dealt with. As somebody who spent quite a long time delivering my children to a childminder in an almost adjacent property, I was familiar over a period of some years, at least with the exterior of this property. And my view is that its conversion into residential use would probably enhance the general environment. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, can we just clear up a bit of ambiguity on its LPR INF2 and at 6.02 that seems to imply that the replacement facility has to be in the ward within Shetway. But then looking at 6.07, it would appear that the boxing club has successfully occupied new premises. So that's in my ward. Not that I'm brave enough to get involved in any boxing. But yeah, it seems to imply sort of two separate things. So I was just wondering if you could clear that up for me.
Thank you. So I think the key thing to point out is that the assessment is that the use is not a community use, but regardless, we have looked at, have had due regard to where the boxing club has gone and looked at whether they have moved to suitable facilities, because there is a little bit of ambiguity there, but my assessment is it's not a community use.
Okay, anyone else wish to talk? Okay, I'm going to propose as per the papers. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Spooner. All those in favour? Okay, that's 11-4. Those against? 1 against, or 2 against, and no abstentions. Okay, that is approved. Okay, welcome Councillor Harwood and Councillor Stephen Thompson. Just quickly, any declarations of lobbying and any disclosures?
Good evening, Chair and members. Thank you very much for reaching the part of the agenda where I can not be suspected of being predetermined. I am aware of the residents concerned in item 16. I have not been lobbied by them or by persons on their interest, but in the interest of disclosure, just letting you know that I do, I have had personal contact with them. Other than that, I don't have anything else to declare. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Right, first of all, I need to declare an interest for items 13 and 14 as a member of the Cabinet, and I took part in discussions around them and so on. I am not aware of having been lobbied on anything else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harwood. The next item, there are no registered speakers. Does anyone wish to see us introduced, or can we take this as a starred item? Okay, Councillor Summerskill doesn't want to introduce, so we'll turn to the officer to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. This application is a land at Carman's Close. The application is for demolition of 3 existing garages and greenhouse and 2 detached dwelling houses. As set out in the planning history, starting on page 45 of the papers, there have been previous refusals on this site. The most recent refusal was upheld by the plan inspector for a single reason. Strangely, this reason was in terms of the excessive hard standing proposed, and the inspector thought that hard standing would have a harm to the character and appearance of the area, and leave insufficient space for landscaping. This issue and the steps that the application has taken to deal with the issue are set out at paragraphs 607 to 611 of the papers, starting on page 49. Going through the pictures, the photographs. This one's looking west along Carman's Close, with the site on the left-hand side. And next, looking the opposite way, looking east, Carman's Close on the right-hand side of the picture, and the main road at the end of that photo. In terms of the layout plan, you have existing houses to the left and the right, and the 2 proposed detached houses in the centre. You'll note that the main 2-storey parts of the houses are set furthest away from existing properties, with the single-storey garages in that space closest to the backs of the existing properties. This is the landscape plan. This is especially important because the the reason for the dismissed appeal in seed landscaping at the sort of front of the site. Officers feel that is a big improvement in terms of the appeal scheme, and that has resolved the inspector's concerns. In terms of the elevations, so plot 1, as I was saying, the main property is 2-storey. You've got the lower scale garage block, which kind of steps down towards the existing properties, thereby reducing impact. Plot 2, this just has the single garage block to the side, and the aerial photograph. Officers feel, yeah, the single ground for this, the dismissed appeal has been adequately addressed. So therefore, officers are recommending approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Summerskill.
Yes, thank you. If you can leave that picture up there, this is my concern is primarily around parking here. We have a closed close here right onto Lewes Road, the main road. You can see in that picture, unlike the ones you have taken down the road, there are 4 cars and a van parked in the area where the access to the housing will now be. And on the left side is a hard standing access to 2 garages in the back there, and a third plot garage at the bottom with a car there. So I'm assuming those 8 vehicles, or 9, will have to find somewhere else to park. And I do not know from personal experience of this area where that would be, apart from on the main road or in the estates opposite. Now, I'm not sure whether that was dealt with adequately. I know KCC Highways have not commented. When we had a similar position on a site in Cox Heath with a cul-de-sac a few months ago, we had a traffic assessment done which covered evening parking as well as daytime parking. I'm not sure at all that we know where those cars come from. Certainly the three properties opposite on the bend there don't have garages, so I assume they relate to those properties opposite at least, and other people perhaps down the close.
Thank you, Councillor Summerskill. If you want to come back.
Yes, I think as was mentioned, there's an existing access on the left-hand side of that image. That access, in terms of the new houses, that access will go. So that space will actually be available now for on-street parking. Yes, I accept that the 2 new houses will have access to their own off-street space on their forecourt. But I think on balance, yeah, you're kind of gaining space from that existing access, and on balance, I don't think there's enough harm there in terms of loss of on-street space to sort of justify refusal. What I would also say as well, yeah, I parked along there this afternoon, and yeah, there was a lot. There's, I think, 2 or 3 spaces there. But I think what I would also say is that there is the possibility, if people don't park along that side of the road, they could park on the opposite side of the road. If the southern part side of the road isn't available because of the new access points, those cars could actually just be transferred to the northern side of that road.
Does that address your?
No, I'm not convinced by that. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak on this? Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. When I read this, I actually came to the conclusion that I actually like the proposal, so I do support it. But what I'm actually going to say is something a little bit different on this. We do have a lot of policies, and those policies need to be taken into account. And one that always seems to come up is LPRS 9, which is development in the countryside. Now, I think this report, that does take what I would loosely call a common sense approach. I do support that. But when I raised this on a previous application, I was almost excommunicated from the committee by certain councillors because I dared to say that we shouldn't religiously follow the policies. So I'd like something from the officers and some advice on this. Should we take a more flexible approach on these policies and look at each one, or do we rigidly have to adhere to them?
I like to add a little bit of. I think this application is different to most because the officers have previously refused permission for a very similar scheme on various grounds, but most of those grounds have been dismissed by the appeal inspector. So this is a resubmission. So effectively, all we're looking at is whether they've addressed the actual concerns of that appeal inspector.
Okay, Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a small point in planning terms, but I'm thinking about the consequences of the decision should it go through. Paragraph 626, there's mention of private covenants. Would it be possible to mention it in an informative, do you think, to be helpful to, I'm not sure how, whether just talking about covenants and have they got the right to have certain parts of the land, if I read it properly or looked at it properly. If I'm wrong, please.
My understanding, you're asking for an informative to highlight that to the applicant.
Just to bring it to their attention so that when the applicants, if this goes through, if they want to do what they want to do, can they have just be wary of other people and covenants and just be considerate rather than just barge through without any thought. I'm just thinking of the future community feel of the road.
Can't see. I've been informed to highlight to the applicant that to kind of investigate whether there are covenants.
Yes, I think that would be. Yeah, I think it might be helpful, especially as there's been so much history on the site. I mean, if you don't agree, I'll step back. It's just something that I
think it's just an informative, Councillor Gooch. It's if the applicant doesn't decide to do it, we just suggest they do it. So I have no issue with that. Okay, Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. This, I think, is clearly a significant improvement over the refuse scheme. And I think it's really interesting reading the inspector's report because he's saying the kind of things that we say as a committee about the need for high quality landscaping and that nature has a place within urban areas as well. So I think it's an interesting inspector's report. I think I am content to move that we grant permission with the informative. And I think it's a good scheme. Thank you.
Okay, I'm happy to second that, but again, emphasising the reason we are approving it is the improved landscaping scheme. Go with it. Okay. But probably just a note for the officers in future with these ones. Maybe a traffic survey beforehand may aid us. Okay, I'm not saying for everyone. I'm just saying maybe a consideration. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So all in favour? (11-4), those against, those abstaining. 2 abstentions, that is approved. Thank you, councillors. Moving on then. So before I introduce this item, can I just confirm that Mrs. Ali is actually present? Okay. Just making sure, otherwise we're going to move it further back. Okay. Thank you. Just also before I introduce you, I just hope councillors have read all the papers and looked at the appeals at the end of this. So just to highlight that. Okay. Okay, I move to the officer to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Yes. This application is a retrospective application seeking to change the use of the land to a gypsy traveler site for the stationing of one mobile home, one Torah, and associated parking. The scheme includes enclosing the site with landscaping and installation of a package treatment plant. The caravans are typical in appearance and would meet the definition of the Caravan Sites Control Development Act 1960 and the Caravan Sites Act 1968. This is the site location plan showing the mobile home positioned. The site location plan, sorry. The next slide on your screen, it's an area view of the application site. So this current slide shows the proposed mobile homes located close to the site boundaries and the proposed landscaping for the site. This current plan shows the mobile homes. The current plan on your screen shows the proposed access and tracking details for the site. With the enclosed location of the site, the application would not result in significant harm to the character and appearance of the countryside. Any adverse effects are demonstrably outweighed by the benefits of the scheme in contributing to the supply of G&T accommodation. The presumption in favor of sustainable development applies in this case, and paragraph 11D of the National Planning Policy Frameworks indicates that permission should be granted. There are no other material considerations that would indicate a refusal of planning permission. The officer recommendation is to approve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Walmsley. Councillor Walmsley is going to speak on both applications at the same time. Okay. And he's got 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wish to make one statement on behalf of the Parish Council in respect of this item and the next item. They're very similar, and I've been given your permission to overrun slightly in order to do that. It'll save time. Blenheim Parish Council objects to both the caravan applications under discussion tonight. The first item on the agenda is for a site close to the current Heathlands development area and just across the lane from the Bull Hill Nature Reserve. The parish has previously submitted detailed comment, which has apparently not been taken into consideration. Though there is a name change, these two sites are on the same lane running between Harwich and Charing Heath, with a third retrospective application on the same lane
currently under consideration, but not yet reached this committee. The Sandway area itself has been the subject of a recent costly enforcement action by MBC to stop the creation of yet another, a fourth caravan park. I would draw your attention to the Gypsy Traveller and Travelling Show People Plan, in particular the response by CALC to the Regulation 18C consultation. Now, I quote from CALC, not me. Basically, CALC is saying that MBC is seen locally as a soft touch, hence the proliferation of applications. The borough already has the highest proportion of GTDS sites in Kent, which itself has the highest proportion of sites in any county. It has surely become the time to draw a line under the continuing proliferation. We'll go on. The MBC draft plan itself is specific about GTS development in the countryside. This is the MBC plan. And I quote again, proposals on non-allocated greenfield land sites in the countryside will not be permitted. There are a number of defined mitigations, but none of these have been addressed in the current applications. I'd also like to point out that these sites lie between the rural service centres of Lenham and Headcorn, which are about 6 miles apart. Both of these parishes already containing multiple existing sites, the largest being about 3 miles from Sandway. With the ever-increasing general population in the service centres, there's a distinct lack of primary school places. Further GTDS children will find it almost impossible to find school places. The Lenham Primary School is earmarked to be doubled in capacity, but this has not yet been finalised. Its catchment area is currently down to a few hundred metres. As we said in our previous comments, these sites are in an unsustainable location, some 2 miles along busy country, in some cases single-track lanes, all without pavements, from the centre of Lenham and its commercial and transport facilities. I would also like to point out from the viewpoint of consistency that there have been multiple applications for single dwellings and even a group of self-build units in Sandway, all of which were refused by MBC planning on the basis of being too remote from the necessary facilities. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, these are simply the wrong sites and the wrong area. The proposals for identifying suitable GTS locations in the MBC's own plan should surely now be being followed. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay, could Miss Ali for the applicant?
Good evening, chairs and members. This is a retrospective application for the change of use of land to a single gypsy and traveller pitch, including 1 mobile home, 1 touring caravan and associated works. This application is before members following a call in by Lenham Parish Council. However, I would respectfully remind members that your professional planning officer who spoke at the start recommendation is to grant permission. The first matter raised relates to impact on rural character. The officer's assessment concludes that given the enclosed nature of the site and existing screening, the development would not result in significant harm to the character or appearance of the countryside. Any harm identified is assessed as less than significant and must be weighed against the benefit of contributing towards gypsy and traveller accommodation supply. Turning to sustainability, the Parish Council have referred to previous appeal decisions relating to permanent dwellings. The officer report confirms those cases are materially different to this proposal. This application is for a traveller pitch, which is recognised within national planning policy as having different locational and lifestyle considerations. Members must also give significant weight to the fact that the council currently cannot demonstrate a 5-year supply of gypsy and traveller pitches, with supply standing at approximately 2.6 years. In these circumstances, national policy states that permission should be granted unless adverse impacts significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The officer report clearly concludes that they do not. Concerns have been raised regarding Stod Marsh and ecological matters. Natural England provided technical comments in relation to nutrient neutrality methodology. The applicant has reviewed and addressed those comments and confirmed that the nutrient budget will be recalculated in accordance with Natural England guidance. Where residual nutrient loading is identified, appropriate mitigation will be secured to ensure the development achieves nutrient neutrality. KCC Ecology raised no objection, subject to conditions securing ecological management and biodiversity enhancements. I respectfully agree with that conclusion and ask members to support the recommendation. Just to clarify all points, the matters relating to countryside impact, sustainability and ecology have all been fully assessed within the officer report and by statutory consultees. The professional conclusion is that any landscape impact is limited and does not outweigh the significant identified need for traveller accommodation. Finally, members must give substantial weight to the acknowledged shortfall in traveller pitch provision. National policy is clear, as stated earlier, that these circumstances permission should be granted. Officers conclude that there is not significantly demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The site is also physically incapable of being expanded, so we would want to reassure members that this will not become a site that is overrun with multiple mobile homes. It is not physically possible to expand on the existing footprint. For those reasons, I respectfully ask members to support the recommendation to grant permission. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Summerfield and Councillor Harwood.
Thank you. Perhaps the officer could just clarify existing and proposed, because we seem to have both. In your presentation, you showed a picture of a mobile home which said proposed. Yet in our documents it says existing, which looks like a picture of the home on site.
Yeah, it is a retrospective application.
And the other point was it says retrospective. So what's being proposed in your comment and what's retrospective? I'm confused because there's two buildings shown on there. And the second point was on the Google aerial photo, the eastern boundary appears to be treed, but were they existing before, or is that just overshadowing because of the Google photograph?
Thank you for the question. Regarding the description of the proposal is described as retrospective application. And so the caravans showing on this current plan are actually existing at the site currently. The description as proposed is because it's currently being considered in spite of the fact that it's still retrospective and on site. And so that is why we label this photo as proposed mobile home. On your second point, there are existing trees to the location that you mentioned. The application is not going to affect these trees.
Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I now recall that I have been lobbied on this one twice. So when I said that I hadn't been lobbied, I spoke in error. However, on this one, I think the critical point is ensuring the really strong landscape screen along the boundary of Hilborn, because as has been pointed out, there are trees around the other angles on the open countryside, but where the house is, there is much less. And I see from the landscaping scheme, it shows a hedgerow, but currently most of that site is planings or something, and it's not currently landscaped. So it's really, really important that we deliver the landscaping scheme as set out on the papers, and that's not just in relation to amenity for both the householder and the residents on the site here. It also if you read the biodiversity net gain delivery, the biodiversity net gain delivery relies entirely upon those native hedgerows going in. So I just think we need some surety that we can hack our way through those planings and actually get that hedge in there and ensure it's protected going forward. And to do that, I wonder whether the hedge needs to have some sort of a fencing along it. So you'll have the surfaced area, then a fence, then the hedge, just as protection and to ensure the proper enclosure. So I think that I'm with that insurance policy that the hedge is there and is maintained. I think in light of the fact there is no harm to the wider landscape or countryside, and we only have a 2.6 year supply for gypsy and traveller sites, and we're 500 sites short. I think I'm happy to move the grant permission, but it is pretty dependent on getting that boundary landscaping secured and protected.
Okay, Francis, can you come back up that boundary planting?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we can amend condition 7 to accommodate the suggestion that you made. Thank you.
I mean, all it would need to be is something like chestnut spile fencing on it, just something to protect the edge of the hard stand in with the edge of the site. Otherwise, I don't think the hedges are going to stand any glues chance. Thank you.
So on that, Councillor Harwood, you are proposing as per the papers with it in it. Okay. Do a seconder at the moment? I'll have some more debate and then we'll come back to a seconder. Okay, I've got Councillor Springett next.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. I think in the papers somewhere it says that they would like some of the hard landscaping to be removed and replaced with soft landscaping, but I couldn't see it in the conditions. Am I missing it?
But I believe that's what we've just been on about.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about hedges. I'm talking about, like, if you look at the whole site is hard surface. So I'm not just talking about a hedge. I'm talking about a bit of grass.
Yeah. So it is covered in condition 7.
Is it in there? I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
If it's covered, that's fine. I just can't find it. And my second comment was, within the papers that come with the application is a comment about the drainage. Is there any mains drainage in this area, or is it all septic tank and cesspit type drainage? Because there's one of the diagrams here that talks about the drainage field, and it says about a trench that must be 15 metres away from habitable building, and the depth of the trench is 350 millimetres, which is just over a foot. Bearing in mind how much rain we have had recently, are we not in a situation whereby that really isn't going to work? Should we be looking at a better? I know there's more drainage to come. It even says it's proposed to carry out a percolation test to find the actual percolation value. And then there's somewhere else in that same bit that it talks about the winter. The formation level of the trench is to be 1 metre above the winter water table level. I'd love to know where the water table is right now. I just have concerns that we could have a potential sewage issue here, and should we be looking at something a bit more robust? Thank you.
Again, that's covered by a condition which is 7B.
Seven B is details of permeable construction of hard standing.
You're thinking about taking into calculation about how the water runs off and how it drains. The permeable calculations would be covered within that.
Yeah, but we've got condition 11. The details of foul and surface water drainage required by condition 7 shall include size of individual cesspits or septic tanks. I don't know. I'm just concerned that with the amount of rain we've had and the amount of standing water we have and flooded fields, I'm just concerned that this may not be robust. I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spring. Okay, I've got Councillor Thompson, then Cleater, then Gooch. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll apologise to officers at the beginning of my remarks for not asking my questions sooner. I regret that I did not do so. But to press on, I'm interested to know the dates of the photographs on page 60, where they've been obtained from, whether that is what site is thought to look like now, and if not, what difference that would make to our adjudication. Councillor Harwood's covered points that I was going to make about the boundary effects. I would like to second those comments. And I'm also interested to know precisely what the details are by which condition, I think it's 5, yes, on page 68, how these are observed and monitored, and what should be done and by whom if we thought that they were not being observed. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'll take some more people, there may be some more questions. So, Councillor Cleater.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just clarification if we could go back to the picture that shows what's on site at the moment, because the application is for one Tourer and one static. And they look both like statics to me. So I just wanted to clarify that, or is it the same one from a different angle? Yeah.
So it's the same one from a different angle.
Thank you.
However, I'll now bring the officer back in. Can you just clarify that those pictures are how recent are those pictures?
Thank you for the question. Regarding your first question, this was submitted with the application. The photographs were submitted with the application. On the second question, condition 5 requires that no vehicle over 3.5 tons shall be stationed, stored or parked on the site at any time. Normally, this is enforced by the council's planning enforcement team. As you would be aware as well, we normally conduct gypsy traveller counts, 6-monthly counts, and generally when these issues come, we do report them to the enforcement team to take action. Thank you.
Does that answer your questions, Councillor Thompson?
I would like to know, thank you very much for that. I'd like to know if officers have indeed assessed that the appearance of the site now is broadly in line with what it shows in the images on page 60.
Yes, so I visited the site last week and took some photos, which are not on the system, and I'm aware that the team leader also visited today. So in terms of the details on the submitted plan, there are no changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to thank Lenham Parish Council for taking the trouble to come in and speak. And the decisions that we have to take can sometimes be very, very hard. And we know that we would like to do, but we cannot. And the fact is, just as we haven't got a 5-year housing land supply, we sure as hell haven't got enough sites for the gypsy and traveller community. And like it or not, we've got to face the fact that if we can be sure that we can get enough landscaping around it, and if we can be sure that there's not a significant, substantial amount of harm, we've got to approve it, because if we try to refuse it, I can assure you a planning inspector will come along and wrap us over the knuckles. It'll cost us a lot of money, and they'll end up getting permission anyway. But at least we do our best to make sure that we do have, as you've heard, that we can get as much biodiversity, protection and all the rest of it. But I just wanted to make that clear, because it can be flipping hard sitting here taking decisions that you really do not want to hear. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Gooch. That's probably summing up how we all feel at the moment. I'm quite, Congratulations on the things that Councillor Harwood has raised. Obviously, I will second from the chair application, highlighting though that the reason for recommending approval is the improved is the beefed up landscaping, and the landscaping has to be amended to adhered to, and also what Councillor Thompson brought up about the spot checks with the 3.5 ton vehicles. Okay, so on that note, I will then move to a vote. So all those in favour? That's 10-4. Those against? 1 against. Those abstaining? 2 abstaining. That is approved. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to a very similar application. Land south of Sandway Road. I move to the officer to introduce the report. Oh, sorry. Oh.
Thank you. So the application tonight is south of Sandway Road in Sandway and seeks the stationing of a single mobile, single tourer and associated day room and hard standing on the site. So the application site is it's an undeveloped plot between the art gallery to the northwest of the plot here, then the dwelling Little Big Inn to the southeast. So here's the proposed site plan. So we can see that the pitch is set 30 metres back from the highway. There's a proposed day room, which is set as being sort of the minimum size required to provide the facilities. There isn't proposed elevations. The applicant has submitted some brochures. So this is the sort of the proposed mobile they're going to purchase for the site. So here's the front boundary of the site. It's taken today. Here's the application site viewing south towards it. This is from the art gallery. As you can see, there's sort of a bit of a hedgerow over here. And here's the application site in 2023. It's just on a sunny day. So a previous application seeking the same development was refused in 2025 on the basis of ecological grounds. It was not assessed that the application resulted in any significant visual harm. The visual impact is assessed in paragraph 6.12 of the committee report. The application has addressed the ecological concerns that were raised, and as such, we're recommending approval. Just to point a correction, so the committee report says that Highways had no objection to the application. Initially, they raised a holding objection, requested some visibility displays from the applicant. The applicant submitted these, and Highways wanted some amendments made to these. We just feel that that can be addressed for a pre-commencement condition, and we can recommend approval on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Another councillor from Lennon Parish Council has already spoken on this one, but just to take his words into consideration on this application as well. And I'll go to the applicant, Mr. Marbury, to speak.
Good evening, Chair, councillors. This application is for a single gypsy pitch consisting of a mobile home, touring caravan and a day room. This application will provide a stable family home and also meet a recognised need in the area. The application is policy compliant, both in terms of local and national policy. There have been no consultee objections, and the ecological conditions that have been recommended are sort of a normal, very run-of-the-mill sort of and expected addition. The parish council comments were addressed by the officer report, as was, sort of most of the issues that normally come up. And we're left with essentially what was a 3-issue application. Because we had a previous submission, which was deemed acceptable apart from the 3 conditions which the officer has mentioned. The first of which was the Lenham wastewater impact or potential for that. We have submitted a HRA which addresses that and confirms that the impact is acceptable. Second issue with Great Crested Newts, we have submitted our certificate for district level licensing. So when we get permission, should we get permission, we have that in place and ready to go. And the third issue was biodiversity net gain. We demonstrated originally a 10% gain, but so we've since, after the refusal, we've now demonstrated 20%, which is expected. And just have to remind everyone that BNG is a post-permission matter. So the biodiversity net gain plan, which is submitted after permission is granted, is what we really have to deal with in terms of biodiversity. Paragraph 11D of the National Planning Policy Framework is engaged due to the lack of a 5-year supply. Therefore, the assessment of the application should be against the National Planning Policy Framework as opposed to the local plan. But as I say, we are policy compliant in terms of both. As such, the application should be approved in line with officer recommendation and local and national policy. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Just before we continue, Will, could you take the presentation down? Because I'm aware that if people are watching, all they can see is that screen and they can't see who's talking. Okay, Councillor Cleety, you've indicated first of all.
Yeah, briefly, it's just nice to have an application going through the proper route and not retrospective. And I think that's the point I want to make. So I'd like to commend the applicant for that, because you know what my big bugbear is us being presented with a fait accompli. So I would like to congratulate the applicants on actually doing things the right way. And I'll reserve any comments later.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Springett.
She took the words out of my mouth. I was actually going to commend the applicants for doing it the right way round, because we get very frustrated when people just seem to show contempt by moving onto land and then doing it the wrong way round. So it was actually exactly what I was going to say. And then just reiterating, if there's mains drainage, can it please connect to mains drainage? Read my previous comments. Thank you.
So, Councillor Springett, you mentioned before about something to do with the level of lighting that you wanted.
That's true. I can't remember in this. This got 4 applications and my little brain's getting confused. On some new housing developments, we're asking for low-level lighting because these are set in the countryside. There's no street lights in the road. And I just wonder whether there was the opportunity to encourage the use of low-level lighting rather than flood lighting and brighter lighting when the lighting application is submitted. I think it would be nice because it's quite a rural setting, a dark environment. Thank you.
So you would just like that noted as a informative, yes? Okay, thank you. Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and I think that's right. There are the cluster of buildings here, but it still does feel very rural in its location. So I think that the lighting is important. We do need to address it. I just wanted to add that having read through the papers associated with the biodiversity net gain on this site, it proves that you can deliver BNG on gypsy and traveller sites quite effectively, because this is a former arable field that has started going, but actually in terms of recreating some nice sandy grassland on that site, putting the native hedges back in, it's quite an exemplar for what you can do. And also BNG is tough and it's in there for 30 years but if nobody has already moved, I'm happy to move that we grant permission with the lighting informative, I think it is, that we seek the lowest level. Thank you.
I believe Councillor Cletty, you seconding?
Happy to second.
Just have to highlight as well that with that, you've got the pre-condensement condition that needs to go, be added. That's on there. Okay, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had highlighted items 9, which Councillor Harwood has drawn attention to. I wondered whether the species mix was as locally relevant and rich as it might be. So I think that he's told us that he's assessed that as well. And 13, with a view to Councillor Springett's comments, I wasn't intending to bring it up. So given the fact that it's now been raised, I would like to know whether or not officers can in fact assure us that what it says in item 13 about lighting the ISO Lux plan and so forth, in fact already address the concerns that have been made. I had assumed that they were, and if they weren't, then I should be more alert to the item in the future and would like to know that the whole gamut of lighting issues have in fact been properly considered and that the information we're given shows us that in future. Please, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Will.
Yes, I think the wording of condition 13, it does ask for very detailed information on lighting. I think so. The applicant would need to provide that in terms of discharge of that item. I think what's been suggested, I think, is that we put an informative on to say, as well as that information, members' preference is for sort of low level sort of batten lighting. I think bollard lighting, sorry, not batten.
Does that address your concerns, Councillor Thompson?
I think I have just learnt that. I'm grateful to Councillor Springett to drawing further attention to the item, and indeed could we please ask that officers keep in mind we have brought this up time and time again, so that it'd be good to see that the work's been visited thoroughly before it gets to this stage. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Nope. Okay, I shall move to the vote then. All in favour? Here, just mass note with the changes and the amendment. Okay. (12-4). Those against? Abstaining? Abstention? That is approved. Okay, moving on. Next item is a starred item. Does anyone wish to see it introduced? No. Does the applicant? No. Mr. Mackay, do you waive your right to speak? It's just to be a starred item. Thank you. Okay, so I'm happy to move from the chair. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Harwood. All those in favour? It's 11-4. Those against? Those abstaining? 2 abstentions. As approved. Moving on then. 4 Ash Gardens, Benham Road. Same again, we don't have a speaker on this, but does anyone wish to see this item introduced?
It was just a comment that with drainage, but I don't know if I can make that referring to my previous comments without the item being introduced.
We can have the item introduced. Francis?
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is a retrospective application proposing to change the use of the land for the stationing of one Gypsy Traveller pitch, one Gypsy Traveller mobile home, and one touring caravan. The scheme includes erection of a utility building with associated parking. The caravans are typical appearance and would meet the definition of the caravan site controls development Act 1960. The utility building is single story with a depth of 3 meters and width of 5 meters. The building has a pitched roof and ridge height of about 3 meters. The slide on your screen now is the site location plan, showing the other Gypsy Traveller sites in the vicinity of the site. The next slide on your screen is the proposed block plan. It shows the location of the caravan, parking, and then the location of the utility building. This is the proposed site plan as well, similar to the one that previously was on your screen. The next slide is the proposed mobile home, the elevations and the floor plan. This plan shows recent appeals in the neighboring sites. The red marking is the application site, and then the remaining are appeal decisions on neighboring plots. When considering these appeals, the inspector concluded that the accommodation would result in significant harm to the landscape character of the area. However, all 5 appeals were allowed, as the inspector found that the adverse impacts of allowing the appeals would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. With the enclosed location of the application sites, the application would not result in significant harm to the character and appearance of the countryside. The adverse effects are demonstrably outweighed by the benefit of the scheme, contributing towards the council's 5-year supply of sites. The presumption in favor of sustainable development applies in this case, and paragraph 11D of the MPPF indicates permission should be granted. There are no other material considerations that would change this conclusion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sprink.
Thank you. This site is obviously in an area that is already quite intensively covered by similar sites. It's a very low-lying area. My same concerns about drainage, with all the rain we've had, if their little drainage systems don't work, there's a huge concentration here of potential. Yeah, pollution is the word I was looking for. Is there anything we can do to require? I mean, I'm looking at that plot and it backs onto the next door's building, you know, and if with all the rain we've had and if these systems aren't working properly, we have got a horrible pollution incident. I don't know if there's anything we can do about it, but yeah, I'm just concerned that we're with the concentration of sites and septic tanks all relying on draining into that little bit of open land, whether there is a potential pollution. I don't know what we can do about it. I'm just raising that as a concern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. The person I would have asked about is sitting down there now, to tell you the truth. But I do think it's worth noting, obviously, in a site like this, the cumulative effects of every one of these places having septic tanks is going to have an impact on the groundwater within the area. I'm also concerned, obviously, about how recent that photo is, because on some of those sites we've approved applications. I'm sure we approved them with landscaping schemes to go with it. And none of that looks very landscaped in the way that we've kind of approved. But I just think it's it may be an old satellite photo, but we'll go for that. But Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think there was a really interesting point around the role of Kent County Council's lead flood authority on Gypsy and Traveller sites because of the amount of hard standing and the vulnerability of the units. And I suggest there should be a reference from the committee that perhaps the chairman or the cabinet member or whatever write to Kent County Council's Lead Flood Authority to ask them to carry out a specific piece of work in relation to G&T sites and surface water there, because the reliance upon septic tanks and so on and surface water don't necessarily mix, or they do, and with really quite unpleasant results. Yeah.
I just think it's been highlighted this year with the amount of rain we've had and the amount of, if I drive around the low-lying areas, the amount of standing water in the fields. And I just think this is, particularly this particular site, not the other ones we've looked at because they're more individual, but particularly here where it's such a concentration of hard surfacing and whatever. Thank you.
But I think you've highlighted quite a point there, Deirdre, about the hard surfacing, and that's why I know the G&T community may think we're being a bit harsh when we asked for some of the softer landscaping, but that actually does help with the drainage, and that's the reason why we asked for it. Councillor Spooner, did you want to come in?
I was just going to agree with what Councillor Harwood had just said. I think we have potential problems being stored up, particularly if we're going to start granting permission for loads more gypsy sites throughout the low-lying areas of the borough. A combination of excessive rainfall and a proliferation of septic tanks, and there could be a colossal pollution problem being stored up unless someone takes a grip on the situation. And perhaps new gypsy sites need to have their own local sewage works. I don't know. I mean, it's something we need to look into. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spooner. I completely agree, and I think if you're happy, Councillor Springett, that me and Councillor Harwood will write to the KCC and actually ask them to carry that piece of work. Okay. Obviously, I would be in Councillor Clifford. The other thing, obviously, it's not just the pollution for the environmental side of it, but anything like that. Obviously, you have got the environmental impact on the people that live there as well, too. So.
Okay, I was just going to come back and say there's a lot of children going to be living in this site, and if the systems aren't working properly, that's really not a nice combination. So it's for the health and safety of the children there as well. Thank you.
Councillor Clear.
Yeah, I don't know. Tony, were you on the water when we did overview and scrutiny, and we did the water? Wasn't Southern or Southeast Water going to give us money towards stuff to do? So it may be worth checking whether they would fund some work. And you know, Councillor Springer is right. We've had our first ever person die of cholera in Bristol. Somebody who'd not been abroad, somebody who, you know, had not been away on a fancy holiday. And my concern, same as you, Councillor Springer, you've got children there, and that particular mix can lead to all sorts of issues, health issues. But yeah, if we can investigate, if we can get some money off the water companies to help with this, that would be useful.
Okay, I don't believe anyone's moved proposed this yet. So sorry, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful to colleagues who decided that we would hear this item. I would like to draw our attention to paragraph 4.02, comments of Headcorn Parish Council, page 99. Being reminded by other parish councils recently that this council, Maidstone Borough Council, should properly consider protests that have been logged with us and not pass over them without comment. Bullet point 1 asks us to consider cumulative impact. Bullet point 3, development in the open countryside, contrary to paragraph 25 of the PPTS, which states that local authorities should strictly limit traveller site development in the open countryside. Unless I've missed something, I would value reflection by our officers on the status of those 2 bullet points and indeed what might be considered relevant in the future. Thank you.
I did draw attention to it. It was to do with the appeals list that follows this the amount the inspector has let through, well, has approved, should we say, since we've refused some of these, does have to take it into consideration, and the officer has highlighted that within the report, Councillor Thompson, that is one of the big factors in that. We all know there's a harm to the countryside. You can clearly see there's a harm to the countryside. It's about how we at most improve it, all the schemes we've got, and actually make the best of them. But it has been highlighted within the report.
With your permission, Chair, I did indeed begin, for some strange reason, preparing for this meeting by reading the appeals list before I read anything else. So I did feel quite prepared in that regard, and I simply wanted to say that I felt that it was important that Headcombe Parish Council's remarks were given public consideration, and that they will have heard our challenge and our response. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So I'm going to propose as per the papers. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Howard. I'm just going to emphasise that is again on the landscaping scheme, and after this we'll have to take a vote just quickly about the recommendation for me and Councillor Harwood to contact KCC. Okay, so all those in favour? That is unanimous. Any abstentions? Okay, sorry. And one against. Sorry, Councillor Perry. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll do the appeals list first. Yeah. So we'll quickly do the appeals list, councillors, and then we'll have that little vote about in Councillor Harwood. Does anyone got any questions about the appeals list? Councillor Thompson.
You will anticipate that I'm very keen to hear a summary overview of items 2 through 7, Mr. Chairman, without leaving out item 1 if there is a useful thing to say about it. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think item 18 in terms of Ash Gardens sort of goes through what the appeal summaries, well, what the inspector's conclusions were. I think for me the sort of takeaway for all the allowed appeals was that the inspector found significant harm in terms of LPR SP9, but despite that, still felt that the overriding need was that great to sort of go against adopted policy.
I mean, we know that we have a very inadequate land supply, you know, while we're developing the DPD and so on. And 2.6, you know, we're half away from having a 5-year land supply. To a certain extent, the writing was on the wall with all of these, and through these delegated decisions to refuse, it has kind of our performance in terms of appeals 1 has taken a very significant hit. So I'm just wondering, is there going to be some kind of assessment and reflection within the planning team why we are so far short of a 5-year land supply that, you know, frankly, it doesn't matter what the impact is, because we're going to lose the appeal, and therefore we need to think more creatively about how do we deliver the landscaping, how do we deliver those other things we need to do, because otherwise we're just going to have a really poor you know, record on appeals full. We still get the development, and frankly we don't get the really good kind of conditions that perhaps we seek. So I just would interested in what the officer's kind of wash up is on this.
Yeah, I think it is a case of trying to be planned, to have these sites planned for rather than on a sort of windfall basis. But I think repeated call for sites haven't actually yielded any well, the sort of quantity of sites required. At the moment, as part of the DPD work, officers are going through a long list of new sites which have come through, and also expanding existing sites. There was a comment on the aerial photograph of Ash Gardens in the Meadows, and in terms of whether that was the sort of current situation, and it isn't. I think since that photograph was taken, I think about 3 or 4 more plots have gone on to the Meadows. One is the subject of another appeal, and I think there are about 3 or 4 so are on the enforcement list, and it's whether in terms of the aerial photograph, you've got 2 distinct areas or plots. Is it more sensible to kind of infill those 2 plots on this site, or look at a greenfield site in a sort of different location? So it's looking at the kind of best place to put those plots, including expansion of existing sites, and I think also new sites.
Councillor Summersgill and then Councillor Springer.
Yeah, on the demonstrating the supply deficit, I'm aware that Maidstone Calc have sent in a document which suggests that we have a much less deficit of supply than what Maidstone Borough Council has been promoting. Has that analysis been looked at in detail yet? Or is there any view as to whether it's so different from our number? It just seems amazingly different.
Yeah, that is a valid point, and I think that the question has been asked of policy, both in terms of Gypsy and Traveller and bricks and mortar. I think the response is that to kind of do that assessment is a big piece of work, and they can't do that on a regular basis. So my understanding is that is done on an annual basis, and they don't have the resource to do that on a more regular basis.
Okay, Councillor Springer.
Thank you. I did actually briefly say to officers, how often are we reviewing this 5-year land supply? And it's annually. Now, tonight, we've seen 6 sites approved on appeal, and we've approved 4. That's 10 just in the last month. So surely we must be providing some of these sites. And I'm just concerned that we are using a figure that probably comes from last June, when every month we're seeing these sites come forward. We're still using 2.6 years. The applicants are still using 2.6 years, and I'm not sure that does reflect what we have. And I would actually like to propose that we consider a 6-monthly review, at least, of the 5-year land supply. Or at least we do it now. We are in such a dire situation, and we are getting so many numbers coming through. I think it's wrong to rely on a figure that was done last year. I appreciate it's a lot of work, but I do think that needs some consideration on how many sites are being approved each month.
I can't say that will get done. However, me and Councillor Harwood will ask for more regular updates in our meetings with the planning department. But for them to undertake that work is quite a lot of work to actually do. And we are also restarting the local plan process as well, which some of this should get captured in, I believe, as well, Councillor Harwood, shouldn't it?
Just to add to that, I mean, the government requires the reporting each year. We have to jump through an awful lot of hoops in truth checking that data, because you need to do it for settled and travelling community. And so I don't know how practical, because we've always got one officer who's working on it the whole time. But our deficit is so great on Gypsy and Traveller sites. It's 500 sites. So even if we are checking off 10 sites each month, we're still only scratching the surface of the overall total. But we will take it back, because we have regular meetings with the policy team, and we will see what we can do, and whether there's a different way of doing it, or whether any other local authorities have more of a kind of a tracking approach, so they kind of tick them off the whole time rather than do the whole thing from scratch?
I think it does possibly come down to tracking. So possibly, is there a way of tracking and doing it that way?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's very simple. We need 500. We share 500. We've built 50. It should just be ticking down, shouldn't it? So, Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. You probably noticed I actually voted either against or abstained on all the items. I have a lot of sympathy with what Lenham Parish Council and the other parish councillors say on this, because they're the people on the ground and they see what's happening. What I am concerned about, and I think it's been alluded to already actually, is the GTA assessment, basic assessment. The one that was done about 15 years ago now, I think, showed a much lower figure. The increase is enormous. Now, I happen to know, I think, that the latest survey was done during the COVID period, a large chunk of it. And there was a lot of questions over the validity of the methodology that was used. And we've come up with this enormous figure. Has it ever been challenged? Because I think it should be challenged, because I'm not even convinced that the methodology was right. And that's leaving us with this dreadful situation, which we come every meeting to, where we're told we've only got this, we need many more Gypsy and Travellers pitches, and we're not meeting the standard, the target. And where we go, I mean, I know I was a protest vote tonight, but because we have no chance. The inspector comes down from Bristol and away we go again. And that's it. And it's an impossible situation for this committee to deal with. And I have every sympathy when the parish councillor comes along here. They're really frustrated. You can sense that. And we can't do a damn thing about it, excuse my language. But it's very, very frustrating. And that's why I protest vote tonight. But I actually think the basic methodology ought to be challenged and looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. I will say that process was done with the old local plan. Obviously, that's done with the cabinet people beforehand. Obviously, we can look at it and see if there's any changes and see if we can be in line with different authorities possibly. We'll have a look at them, and Councillor Hall would have a look at that. Councillor Spooner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I suppose I'm quite fortunate we have no Gypsy and Traveller sites in Bearsted and Downswood, but I do hear from ward councillors from other areas that there are stories, there are rumours, there's gossip about lots of these Gypsy sites not actually being lived in by bona fide gypsies. I don't know how true that is, but I think it could grossly overrepresent the numbers of new sites we have to provide. We now have a situation where the applicant does not have to indicate that the proposed occupant is of Gypsy and traveller status. They are just covered by a condition on the planning permission. And therefore, anybody can apply for a Gypsy site somewhere, nobody in mind, they just do it. And then it is up to the local authority to ensure that condition is enforced and applied. And I just wonder if we actually need to do that, to actually have a review of all the Gypsy sites to make sure they're actually being lived in by bona fide gypsies. I don't know, it might be false rumours running, I've got no idea, but it seems to me that is something we perhaps need to do. Secondly, on the monitoring of sites being granted permission, back in the days when I was a local planning authority planning officer, which is more years ago than I really care to remember, we used to keep a regular, daily, up-to-date record of houses being built and houses coming forward. So we could, at any point in time, we could go to our housing supply officer and say, well, how many permissions will be granted in the last 6 months? And they could do it. Yeah. Seems to me that we could perhaps do something similar with Gypsy sites. So we don't need to have a yearly review. We don't need to have a 6-monthly review. It could be surely continually updated as soon as the planners find out the site has been installed and it's occupied. Right, it ticks off, that's an extra one. Just an idea I'm throwing out for consideration.
I believe, Councillor Spooner, Councillor Harwood may correct me on this, but when I first came to planning 10 years ago now, that when Gypsy Travel Sites used to come forward, there used to be that we've, out of our 500 allocation, we've approved a certain amount so that we actually had that kind of take into account. So I don't think it's something that's going to be too hard for the officers to have a look at. Councillor Ridden.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to comment on Councillor Spooner's, what he mentioned about the information I have in our ward that Gypsy and Traveller sites are being let out to people who aren't Gypsy and Travellers, but so I fully support what he mentioned. The point I wanted to raise really is in our borough we are well off the numbers for Gypsy and Traveller sites, but it does seem to me that several wards are getting a large percentage of them. Particularly we saw it tonight with Lenham and Headcorn, where if you looked at their percentage, it's way above other wards in our borough. And I'd just like to see how we might address that. Obviously, if we can spread them over the borough, it seems you don't have all these biodiversity issues, etc., but they seem to get penciled into certain wards. Thank you.
I've got no issue with trying to look at that. I think when we have tried to look at that in the past, and I think again many years ago there was an allocation of funding to do an allocated site, a council site. Unfortunately, like most things, no one could agree where it should go because nobody wanted it in their ward. And that funding was then lost, and Medway, I believe, and Tunbridge and Wells and Ashford actually did put those sites in and did use that funding, so that took up some of these 500 homes that we're talking, or 500 sites we're talking about. Councillor Harwood, did you want to indicate the comment?
I just wanted to kind of balance this debate a little bit in that we have got around, well, we've got about half as many sites. Yeah, we've got about 500 Gypsy pitches in the borough, roughly 521, something like that, probably 531 after tonight. So, but and we've got tens of thousands of houses. And interestingly, if you look at the weekly list, 90% of the applications on the weekly list are residential, but the whole of our planning committee is Gypsy and Traveller. So there is a distortion in the applications that are being called to committee, and you know, there are a number of reasons for that. So I wouldn't want us to think that there's thousands of applications from Gypsies and Travellers and none from the central community, because actually there's massively more, you know, to you know, many times more. What in the National Planning Policy Framework consultation goes through as is intended, the ability to call in small applications like Gypsy and Traveller applications will probably evaporate anyway. So that might solve the problem. But but I do think there's a bigger issue, just as my final point, around if colleagues have not read the consultation on National Planning Policy Framework, I urge that they do, because it is not incremental change, it is revolutionary change to the way that planning is done. It is a profound centralisation of planning, and the functioning of this and other planning committees will be irrevocably changed if it goes ahead as currently planned. It's a you know significant centralisation.
Councillor Springer, I'll make you the last speaker, and then we've got that
Thank you.
vote.
I hear what you're saying about number of houses versus number of Gypsy Traveller sites. I would like an exercise to be undertaken to say how that balance works in other areas, because I suspect in London it's quite a bit different. And I suspect in Oxford the percentages comparison is quite a bit different. And I think if we did look around the country to see where the percentages lie between applications for houses and applications for Gypsy and Traveller sites, I think we might be top of the pile. But there's a lot of other rural areas, Tony, There's a lot of other rural areas, and I just think it will be an interesting exercise to do.
Yeah. We're not, yeah, sorry, yeah, we're not having a debate. Okay. All right, so just quickly to move on then, obviously a quick vote to say that you want me and Tony to actually write to the KCC to do a piece of work on the low levels, water level and foul water drainage within the lowland areas. Okay, all in favour? Okay, agreed. And on that note, I'll bring the meeting to a close. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.